You would be very hard pressed to find an agreement within the gaming industry that has been as long-standing and financially fruitful as the one that has been shared with EA and FIFA. It's a partnership that came to fruition way back in 1993 with close to 30 years worth of annual releases, as well as various tournament-specific games for World Cups and Euros. Its games have released on a vast array of platforms in their time, perhaps more than any other franchise. It has also been successful as a mobile game in recent years. It's a partnership that appeared to be going from strength to strength during its run. Up to this time last year, any suggestion of it ending would have been seen as a load of rubbish. It's an agreement that, in the face of various controversies on both sides, has continued to flourish with no signs of stopping, bringing in billions of revenue. But all of a sudden, towards the back end of last year, there were suggestions from EA that they were ready to go it alone with their footballing juggernaut, and this has only intensified in recent weeks. So are EA set to say farewell to a partnership of 30 years? And what will it mean if they did? It's the early 90s, and off the back of various football games such as Sensible Soccer and Tekken World Cup, a new player was ready to enter the market. Electronic Arts, under their EA Sports label, were set to bring their own take to the world's biggest sport, but they weren't there to mess about. They wanted to set their game away from the rest, and what better way to do this than getting the license of the world governing body of football, FIFA. And with that, December 1993 saw FIFA International Soccer release on the Mega Drive. That was the start of one of the biggest game franchises we now see today. From then on in, without fail, a FIFA game was released every year. FIFA 95, for example, saw the game expand to club teams. FIFA 96 saw the first use of a real-time 3D engine. Year on year, more and more licenses were added. Lower divisions, manager modes, Be a Pro, and of course Ultimate Team would all come in good time. The game in the last decade or so certainly hasn't evolved anywhere close to how it used to, but financially it has got bigger and bigger. The rise of Ultimate Team has led to the game raking in billions through microtransactions, no matter how controversial they might prove to be. These days, the game certainly does pick up a fair bit of criticism in terms of gameplay and features or lack of. Despite this, the game continues to be a massive success from a financial point of view. Therefore, on the face of it, you'd think from afar there is no chance of this clearly dominant, clearly successful agreement ever going away, but that's where you would be wrong. So what does this FIFA license actually entail? Well, actually, it's very, very little. As the EA CEO was reported to have said, 4 letters on the front of a box, which in an increasingly digital world doesn't really mean much at all. There is of course the World Cup, but with that only being 4 years, that for the most part doesn't bring much value to EA. As it is in their standard releases, the World Cup depicted on career mode is very tame and hardly anywhere near to the real thing. So ultimately, it is just the name, and if it's to be believed, FIFA were after more than $1 billion every 4 years for the next cycle. Even now it's $150 million a year. Now, as evil as EA are, you can't really blame them for having second thoughts on the partnership when you look at that price. The FIFA license obviously does somewhat carry, and for where EA were towards the start of the franchise, it was definitely worthwhile. The FIFA label helped sell the game as the go-to football game, the official game of the world governing body, almost the official game of world football. That gives it a status that no competitor could match. But times change. EA are not the same EA from the early 90s. The FIFA games are not the same as the FIFA games from that time either. There is definitely an argument in terms of the gaming world. FIFA need EA more than EA needs FIFA. It would be a fair assessment that FIFA, the game series, is actually more well known than FIFA the organisation. Other than keeping $1 billion in the bank, EA will be able to break away from the confines of FIFA and expand the franchise and look for growth in different ways. I'm going to quote an article with VGC, which I've left in the description, where EA CEO Andrew Wilson said, "As we look to the future, we want to grow the franchise, and ironically, the FIFA license has actually been an impediment to that. Our players tell us they want more cultural and commercial brands relevant to them in their markets, more deeply embedded in the game, brands like Nike, but because FIFA has a relationship with Adidas, we're not able to do that. Our players tell us they want more modes of play, different things beyond 11v11 and different types of gameplay. I'll tell you, it's been a fight to get FIFA to acknowledge these types of things that we want to create, because they say our license only covers certain categories. Our players want us to expand into the digital ecosystem more broadly. Our fans are telling us they want us to go and participate in that space. Our FIFA license has actually precluded us from doing a lot of this stuff. Again, FIFA is just a name on the box, but they've precluded our ability to be able to branch into areas the players want." Don't get me wrong, I'm sure the ambitions he is referring to have some way of being horrifically monetised, but ultimately the franchise has been a bit stale in recent years and could do with some bigger changes. There is also an argument of whether an association with FIFA is worth the hassle. Look, it isn't as if EA are particularly squeaky clean, with rather big issues regarding FIFA games themselves and the gambling-esque nature of Ultimate Team. I have a future video on that. But that is all rather tame when compared to the corruption and human rights violations that have tarnished football's world governing body. So, what about FIFA in all this? Well, as I said earlier, I feel as if FIFA lose out more in this than EA. FIFA lose their easy way into the gaming world, which of course is worth a lot of money. The games also get their name out there far more regularly than anything they do themselves, other than when some new scandal comes out. It may not be referring to them specifically, but just having the name FIFA displayed on adverts in shops or in boxes is getting them out there. My gut feeling is that FIFA will look at ways in which they can stay within the gaming industry. This could be in the form of putting the rights out there for another publisher to come and get them, or in the form of just allowing certain games to have licenses to their competitions, much like UEFA do. And to be honest, I hope they do get picked up by another company. Football games have been crying out for some decent competition since the glory days of PES on PS2. Adriano the absolute GOAT, anyone who remembers him. Konami these days, they're just not up to it. And with their eFootball amounting to no more than an absolute clusterfuck of a disaster, they seem to be out of the running. There is UFL, which is by Strikers, get the Z out there, which is aiming to take the fight to EA with their fair to play tagline. However, it would be great to have two major companies, and if UFL, maybe even three. As I've somewhat referred to in this video, the FIFA games have been becoming a bit stale in recent years. EA have been rather complacent in the wake of PES falling away. Ultimately, competition is good for everyone. It drives everyone to look at ways to make the best product, which leads to the players benefiting. EA will of course continue with their footballing series, albeit under a different name. Once we all get used to having a different term to call our football games, EA will continue to do just fine regardless of no FIFA license. Ultimate Team is essentially a brand of its own and will fight for God knows how long. Although it has to be said, the rumoured and trademarked EA Sports FC name is a total load of shite. However, modes such as Pro Clubs and Career Mode do need a serious kick into gear. And maybe, just maybe, the way the game improves as a whole is by their long-held name going elsewhere.